What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so look, I'm just going to say this right now. I know some of you get a little bit tired of these LeBron versus Jordan videos. Um, Although I think some of you say it, but I think you kind of like it. You kind of like it because you watch them. Okay. Um, but anyway, if you do get irritated, let me just say this emphatically. I'm only responding to what they are talking about. Okay. I don't create these narratives. I only respond to things that I think are not factual. That's all I do. In short, I didn't start the fire. All right. So let me talk about these extreme LeBron fanatics for a second. All right. When it comes to teammates, they seem to have this blind spot when it comes to the talent level that was around LeBron since he joined the Miami Heat in the 2010 offseason. It's almost a liken to what some of these old time 20th century dictators did, like Joseph Stalin, for example. Joseph Stalin was the premier de facto dictator of Russia from about 1924 to 1953, although earlier on his power wasn't as consolidated as it became by the late 1920s. He had to get rid of rivals. And that's my point. When Stalin went through his purges, right, his political purges, what did he do? Stalin ultimately, as the younger generation grew up under his regime, he had all of his threats to his supremacy eliminated from the history books. You know, for instance, there was a picture of Stalin, Lenin, and Trotsky. What would he do? He would have Trotsky removed so that Stalin would get more of the glory, even though Trotsky was technically the main guy under Lenin for a while, you know. But because Trotsky and others pose a threat, he would have them removed. So basically, I'm saying like some of these extreme LeBron fanboys, they do the same thing as much as possible to some of LeBron's teammates. Okay, but this is the thing that really gets me. They also pull the reverse. They they seem to inflate some of Jordan's teammates. This is the one area that a lot of extreme LeBron fans don't like to talk about because this is the one area where LeBron slightly falters. And it's the fact that if you look at those Miami Heat teams, all right, from top to bottom, if you look at those even the Cleveland Cavalier teams that went to 3 straight NBA Finals, winning one, and definitely look at this Lakers team, and then you look at the Bulls teams, you get a sense that LeBron had more talent around him, generally speaking, than Scottie. And one thing that they do is they somehow want to inflate Steve Kerr, right? Of all people, Steve Kerr. Why do they choose Kerr, in my opinion? Well, number one, it's the millennials' fascination with the 3-point shot, for one. They equate the 3-point shot with skill. Somehow, being able to shoot a basketball with accuracy from 24 feet out supersedes being able to have a plethora of post moves, being able to score with your back to the basket, being face up, being a triple threat, uh, you know, being able to rebound, being able to pass with efficiency and fluidity throughout the game. You know, all these different things. Being able to play hard nosed defense. All of those things are inferior to being able to just, when you're open, being able to knock down a three-pointer from 24, 25 feet out. If you could do all those other things, but you lack that ability, then somehow Steve Kerr supersedes you. Look, I know why you guys are deluded into thinking that. It's that. Plus, if you used to watch those old, what was that program called on NBA TV? Was it called NBA Roundtable? I think it was, where Steve Kerr would be on there before he became coach of the Warriors. It was between his stint as a Phoenix Suns, what was he, like, general manager, and before he became coach of the Warriors, he'd be on that program, and a lot of time he'd be introduced as NBA legend, five-time champion Steve Kerr. And when I used to hear that, I used to laugh to myself, like, hey man, I'm not trying to be funny, but look, people get on Kenny Smith because Kenny Smith sometimes acts as though he was up there with Barkley and Shaq. But Kenny Smith was at least, okay, a star in college with North Carolina. And Kenny Smith, at least for a while, like, when he was younger, was a borderline all-star player. Like, borderline. Like, he had some seasons with the Kings, and I think with the Atlanta Hawks. Jerry Kerr activated Kenny Smith. He had some seasons averaging like 17 points, 7 assists, 18 points, 6 assists. He had some decent seasons, okay? And the thing about it, at least Kenny Smith was a fucking starter for most of his career. Look, Steve Kerr was not a fucking star. Okay, let me give you this. Okay, let me give you this, the skinny. True, Steve Kerr is the all-time leader in three-point percentage. Okay, he is 45.4%. He was the best in his era at knocking down an open three. Okay, because he played on teams uh, when he was in Cleveland, Orlando, Chicago, and San Antonio. I skipped out Portland for a particular reason for a while. Well, no, actually, I'm going to include Portland. He did knock down some open threes, okay, 2 or 3 good looks, but he was not a volume scorer. He was not a volume three-point shooter. Like in this era, if Steve Kerr had to take 11, 12 threes, I would suspect his percentage would be a lot lower. Okay, he couldn't. He was not good at creating his own shot. He wasn't a good defensive player. He wasn't a good rebounder. He wasn't even though he generally played point guard, sometimes shooting guard. He wasn't even the greatest ball handler. John Stockton used to eat Steve Kerr up in that. I'm gonna tell you something. If you watch those 97, 98 finals, John Stockton gave Steve Kerr fits. And remember, this was John Stockton when he was 34, 35 years old. John Stockton used to eat him alive. Steve Kerr couldn't even fucking start. Okay? He wasn't even a goddamn starter. But because he's, California born, hate to say it, white boy, okay? Nice personality, okay? Um, People liked him. Able to knock down some clutch shots throughout the game, okay? People, he gravitated. He was pretty good on the mic. So when it came to his post-NBA career, he had some opportunities. But this is the thing, man. He was not a great player, man. So you got to understand, also, back in those days, they had what you call three-point specialists. Their job We still have some 3-point specialists. You have guys like that today, J.J. Redick, Cal Corver. But back in those days, 3-point shooters were almost always 3-point specialists. Their job was just to look for the three and to get a good look. And another reason why this has to be stated, another reason why Steve Kerr shot the way that he shot is because Steve Kerr was fortunate to have two things on most of his teams. All right. Credible scoring options, superior scoring options, which led the defense to be primarily focused on those guys. So that gave Steve Kerr open looks, okay, on the weak side. And also, he played on teams with great passers, whether it was for the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Johnson, or whether it was Cleveland with Mark Price, or whether it was Chicago Bulls with Scottie Pippen, or Tony Kukoc. Jordan was a underrated, very good passer as well. Or whether it was later on with Scottie Pippen again with the Raptors, or whether it was toward the very end of his career, whether it was with a young uh, Tony Parker, or whatever, or whether it was a great overall team. Avery Johnson was a good passer too. Uh, and you had Duncan and Robinson and Rasheed Wallace, Pippen and Jordan. He even played in Orlando, I think, one year with Shaq and Penny. You know what I'm saying? You had all these other great players that the defenses were primarily concerned with. And being that Penny was a great passer or whatever, um, Shaq developed into being a good post passer. All right. You fucking wide open. You're going to be wide open. You got Jordan and Pippen on your fucking team, right? You're going to be fucking wide open. You got Rodman, who's not known for being a scorer. You got Longley, who he had like a little 12-foot, little baseline jumper. That's about it. All right. You got Scottie Pippen, Hall of Famer. Michael Jordan, Hall of Famer. Steve Kerr. We're going to be primarily concerned with those two dudes. Okay. Steve, uh, we're picking up poison. We'd rather have you hit three wide open threes, okay, and go 3 for 6, rather than Jordan just go off on single coverage for 45 or 50, or Scotty go off for a 20-point triple double. You feel me? So that's Steve Kerr. He was not a great fucking player. All right, and this is another thing too. Steve Kerr gets way too much credit as a supporting cast member on those Bulls teams. All right. John Paxson was better than him. Okay. John Paxson hit a clutch three, in the 93 finals, the championship winning shot. Okay. Steve Kerr did the same thing in 97. Um, but the thing about John Paxson was actually a starter for most of that era in the first championship period. I think he was the Bulls starter at point guard. I think he replaced Kyle Macy. I think it was starting in the 86-87 season. I think that was the first year that John Paxson was there, I think. All the way through about 90, I think 91, 92 is when Paxson pretty much stopped being a starter and it started being B.J. Armstrong. But John Paxson was a better player, all right? Steve Kerr, I'm just going to top my head, he probably put up his best season. Steve Kerr probably is maybe on one of those Cavalier teams or something, or maybe those Bulls teams before Jordan got there. Maybe he averaged 8 or 9 points. Maybe. But most of the time, Steve Kerr probably give you 5 points a game. All right? Whereas Paxson, I'm just guessing, probably 9 and 5 assists, but he had seasons where he probably averaged maybe 11 points, 6 assists or something like that. And like I said, he wasn't the best player, but he was definitely better. Now, the guy who was the best point guard in the Jordan era, um, like as far as shooting. Now, Ron Harper played point, but he was essentially more of a shooting guard, but he played point and was more of a defensive player. But Ron Harper's upside was better than all those guys. As we all know, they used to call Ron Harper the poor man's Jordan. But by the time he was with Chicago, he was not that same guy anymore. But out of all those shooting point guards, B.J. Armstrong was the best. In fact, in 93, 94, the only year that Jordan was out the entire year, when he retired and went to play baseball, he was an all-star. I think BJ averaged maybe something like 14 points and 8 assists. He was an all-star that fucking year. As was Horace Grant, the only year that he was an all-star. I think Horace Grant averaged like 16, 11 or 15 points, 11 rebounds or something like that. And they're two of the main reasons why the Chicago Bulls team was still able to win 55 games without Michael. You know, and that's another thing. You know, Horace Grant doesn't get his just due. All these other guys don't get their just due. But that's another thing too. A lot of LeBron fans like to mention this in their talking points, right? They like to mention that, well, when LeBron left Cleveland the first time, they plummeted. And when LeBron left Cleveland the second time, look how they suck. Okay? Um, Look what happened to Miami when LeBron left. They were never contenders again. But when Jordan left Chicago, they still won 55 games. So that proves that A, Jordan is overrated, and B, it proves that his supporting cast was better. No, it does not. Because you want to play that stupid game. What you have to remember is, yes, Jordan did leave Chicago to go play baseball, but Scottie Pippen was just entering his prime. So there was also some internal factors as well when it comes to this. Scottie Pippen was just entering his prime. Also, Phil Jackson was the coach of that team. All right, Phil Jackson's a very, very, very good fucking coach. And also, what has to be remembered is the 93 Bulls and the 94 Bulls were pretty much totally different teams. If you look at the roster for roster, it was a totally different team. Chicago shored up their bench, which was a big problem with the 93 team. Jordan and Pippen had to really pretty much carry the load for that 93 Bulls team. They had the weakest bench of all of the teams, that 93 team. The 94 team added Steve Kerr. They added Tony Kukoc, who in today's NBA, in my opinion, would be a perennial all-star. They added Ron Harper. They added Luke Longley. They added all of these guys who would be part of the unit for those 70s 2-win, 69-win, 62-win Chicago Bulls teams that would win those 3 titles. Okay? So they shore up their bench. They became more of a team. It became a team more identified with their defense. They had the Pete Myers. True, you missed the 30 points per game from Michael Jordan. The 32 points per game, actually, from Michael Jordan. What they did was they slowed the pace down. All right, they knew they weren't going to score as many points, but they tried to make up for it as far as collectively as a unit. They slowed the pace down, and it became a very, very good defensive team. Chicago had to be a top 3 or 4 defensive team that year. And it was their defense that allowed them to win a lot of games that they shouldn't have won and they shouldn't have been in. And Horace Grant was entering his prime. B.J. Armstrong had a career year. All of these things play factors as to why Chicago was able to overachieve and win 55 games. But in the same situation, okay, when Jordan just completely left a team, all right, like LeBron James, and the same thing happened where like the coach left, other star players left, which gets forgotten with that LeBron narrative. The same thing happened. The team fell apart. In 2010, it wasn't just that LeBron left. Mike Brown got fired. All right, the whole coaching staff got fired. Certain players were out with injuries that year in 2010, 2011. That's why they went from like 61 wins or whatever it was down to like 17. All right, the Bulls went from 62 wins to I think 13 wins. But I don't have to bring that up. But this is the thing. Michael Jordan's career with the Chicago Bulls, the championship years, or the years he went to the finals. What is the championship year? Because he never lost the finals. He had Scottie Pippen on his team. All right, these are the players that are in the Hall of Fame. He had Scottie Pippen, or going to be projected Hall of Famers. All right, Scottie Pippen, Robert Parrish, but Robert Parrish was finished. It was Robert Parrish last year, his 21st season. He was 43 years old, but he was done, essentially. He kind of got a free ring. Dennis Rodman, and that's about it. Okay, that's about it as far as Hall of Famers on his team. Um, Ron Harper's very good, but he's not a Hall of Famer. Now, LeBron, Dwayne Wade is going to be a Hall of Famer. Chris Bosh, I believe, is going to be a Hall of Famer one day. Kevin Love is going to be a Hall of Famer. Kyrie Irving is going to be a Hall of Famer. Anthony Davis is going to be a Hall of Famer. All right? So that's 5 guys already. Now I'm just naming the championship years. Because if I went before that, I could name Shaq, even though Shaq was done. But still, I named Robert Parrish. So if you go with his whole career, I'm not sure if I do that, but I'm just going to keep it with these years. So the years he's in the finals. Well, then in 2007 went to the finals too. And I think he had Antoine Jameson, who I don't think is going to be in the Hall of Fame, but you can make a case he should be. All right, so that's 5 Hall of Famers, right, to Michael's 3. So I'm trying to figure out, Ray Allen. So that's 6. That's 6 Hall of Famers to Michael's 3. So I'm trying to figure out how is it that Jordan had more help than LeBron. Jordan never had a player like Anthony Davis on his team. Do you understand in the era that Jordan played in, do you know how much easier his life would have been if he was to play with a David Robinson? Hell, even an Alonzo Mourning. Do you know how much easier Jordan's life would have been for the Bulls? That's all I'm going to say, man. If can you imagine? Let me just end the video on this note. As much as I love Scottie Pippen, could you imagine if the Chicago Bulls had a combination of Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan on the Bulls? Oh my fucking God. Imagine the Dominique that played in '93 that came back from the Achilles tear. All right, the most successful comeback from Achilles rupture ever. Came back, revitalized his game, adjusted his game, had the 3-point shot, averaged 29.9 points per game. Would have won the scoring title if it wasn't for Jordan, who averaged 32.6, led the NBA in steals that year. Imagine those two on the same team. Man, my God, just give the Bulls a title. Don't play the fucking season. But you're telling me that LeBron with Anthony Davis. Matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, Rondo. I don't know if Rondo's a Hall of Famer, but you can make a case for it. You can make a case, a serious case. He's won a championship. He's been to 2 NBA finals. He's led the NBA in assists like 2 or 3 times. Um, he's way up there in triple doubles. He's up there. He's in the conversation for Hall of Fame. When you really look at his numbers, and then God, Dwight Howard, 7. Dwight Howard. Okay, I understand he's a faded version of himself, but I did the same thing. Robert Parrish. So there's 4 Hall of Famers. Let me see. Outside of Jordan, you got Pippen, Parrish, Rodman. Okay, 3. To LeBron's 7, not including himself. And I might be forgetting somebody. I know I'm probably forgetting somebody. Get out of here, man.